This is Les Wilgus from the Department of Commerce, U.S. Commercial Service. This webinar, entitled Russia, Familiarization to Export, is one of 6 country-specific webinars hosted by the U.S. Commercial Service St. Louis office, giving you a general overview of doing business in each country. The St. Louis office is one of over 100 domestic offices, in addition to another 100-plus offices in over 80 countries. Our mission is to help U.S. companies by providing export counseling and assist with finding qualified agents and distributors overseas. If you aren't working with your local U.S. Commercial Service, set up a meeting to discuss your company's goals overseas and how the organization may be able to assist. You can find us at www.export.gov. We will have 2 speakers for today's webinar, Corey Simic and Ken Walsh, the main speaker of this event. First, we'll introduce Corey Simic. He is the director of the U.S. Commercial Service in St. Louis. He will take just a few minutes to give an overview of the commercial service itself and its benefits to the export partners. Corey.
Thank you, Les. I appreciate that. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is Corey Simic. I'm the director of the United States Commercial Service located here in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, we work with many of you, so many of you are familiar with the Commercial Service, but some of you may not be. So the U.S. Commercial Service is part of the International Trade Administration, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. Sounds complicated. The U.S. Department of Commerce is a very big federal government agency, but we're a small part of that agency with a very big, important mission, though. Our mission is to protect and promote American business interests all over the world. And primarily we do that by helping American companies export more. As Les mentioned, we have over 100 offices all over the United States, from New York to San Francisco, even in Peoria, Illinois, and of course right here in Missouri. Our St. Louis office covers most of Missouri and southern Illinois, and we also have a Kansas City office that covers the Kansas City metropolitan area. Although I love this slide, those numbers there are never really up to date. We've got over 150 offices in likely over 80 countries. We're always moving people around wherever in the world they need to be to help you do more international business. And on the next slide, I'll show you how we do what we do, how we help you make trade happen. Primarily, we do 4 basic things. We engage in counseling, market intelligence, matchmaking, and commercial diplomacy. When we help you with international business counseling, we really just roll up our sleeves, talk to you one-on-one at our office or more likely where you do business, and we talk about the challenges and opportunities that face you, whether it's simple shipping and documentation forms to more proactively figuring out which markets in the world you need to be doing business in and how to get you there. We provide market intelligence prepared by our commercial officers and their staff all over the world. Some primary market intelligence, secondary market intelligence, and we can help you make sense out of all the information available out there and provide a good deal of that to you directly as well through our web pages and through your relationship with our commercial specialists and our commercial officers right here in St. Louis and around the world. And we help you meet the right people anywhere in the world to help you do more and better business there, whether you're finding an agent or a distributor or someone that you need to have help entering or penetrating a market more deeply. And finally, commercial diplomacy is when we engage professionals, like our main speaker, Commercial Officer Ken Walsh, for example, to work directly with foreign governments on your behalf and to advocate for your interests there. Now, we fully expect that many of you will have successful sales in Russia as a result of today's webinar, or someday as a result of the additional assistance that we can provide you, because we're here to help and we want to. So I wanted to give you a heads up, because you might, in about 6 months or so, we might follow up with you, and you might see this form from us on the next slide. And I think I should tell you why we do what we do and why taxpayer funds support what we do and why we're here to help you. Because we believe that by helping you export more, we help you strengthen your business, do more and better business, and we strengthen the U.S. economy, and we can help you create and sustain real jobs for real people. We don't believe that the government creates jobs here, but we do believe that we can provide you with a great deal of support and help that can help you improve your business bottom line and help you provide real jobs for real people. So to that end, Congress has asked us to do what we do. We're passionate about what we do, and they've also asked us, whenever we work with companies, to follow up with the form on the next page here. So in about 6 months or 9 months or maybe a year from now, we'll reach out to you if we're not working with you on a daily basis anyway already, and we'll ask you how you did. We'll ask you what sort of successful sales you may have had in Russia or in any other countries where we've helped you. And I wanted you to see this form because you'll see it from us, and it's our way of making sure that the value that we provide you via webinars like this, or via the counseling that we give you after the call, or the market research and intelligence that we give you, anything that we do for you needs to be of value. It needs to matter. And so this is our way of verifying that what we've done has helped you, even in some small way. So I wanted to show you this form because you'll see it again. And I wanted to wish you good luck in Russia and all over the world. And I look forward to our staff here in St. Louis, Kansas City, and all over the world. We look forward to working with you closely. Les?
Ken Walsh began his career as a Foreign Service Officer with the U.S. Commercial Service, U.S. Department of Commerce in November 2008. He currently serves as a commercial officer in Moscow, Russia, where he assists U.S. businesses develop their understanding of the Russian market and helps them export their products to Russia. Ken has spent his career assisting small businesses and advocating for U.S. industries throughout his work with several trade associations. He has served as the Director of Conventions and Meetings at the American Hotel and Lodging Association, the Director of Membership and Partner Marketing for the American Society of Travel Agents, and the Director of Business Services of the National Association of Broadcasters. Just before joining the commercial service, Ken served as Vice President Partnership Marketing for Partner Concepts, a global marketing and public relations firm where he managed the Visa credit card and Ethiopian Airlines accounts. I'd like to thank Mr. Walsh for taking time to share his expertise today. Ken.
Great. Thanks a lot, Les. Good morning. My name is Ken Walsh, as Les mentioned, commercial attaché with the U.S. Commercial Service located at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. In today's presentation, I'd like to accomplish the following items. Provide a brief overview of Russia and its economy, discuss some of the challenges of operating in Russia, outline a few of the key market opportunities in Russia, and give you some strategies on how to sell into the Russian market. This presentation will provide a large amount of information on the slides with links to many additional resources. These slides will be made available to you after the presentation. What I wanted to start with is just describing Russia in general. Russia is a large country, both economically and geographically. It is the largest country in the world, spanning 9 time zones, and is almost twice as large as the United States. The country has vast natural resource reserves, including hydrocarbons, which are a prime driver of the economy, that being oil and gas. Russia has large amounts of agricultural land. Much of it is undeveloped. Some claim up to half of the arable land in the world is found in Russia. And because of the huge land area and relatively vast distances between cities, logistics is an issue that you need to pay close attention to in this market. Russia is, just some figures I'm going to throw out there just to show you the size of the Russian market. Russia is the 9th most populous country in the world. It's situated between Bangladesh and Japan on the ranking table, so just slightly larger than Japan. 73% of the population live in urban areas as compared to 82% in the United States. And the median age is similar to the U.S., but life expectancy is much lower. Of course, Russia divides into 2 continents in Europe and Russia. I've seen Europe and Asia. The European land area is much more densely populated than its Asian central and eastern sections. There are 12 cities in Russia with over 1 million in population, and that compares to 9 in the United States. So it has a smaller population, but more cities over 1 million people. So a lot of the population is concentrated in just a few cities. You'll see on the slide when you receive it the names of some of the largest cities. Here we go. Great. So there's the population centers on the screen and the list of the cities with their population numbers. All right. So now let's talk about the economy. Russia is the 7th largest economy in the world, between 6th place Germany and 8th place Brazil. Russia is currently experiencing good economic growth of nearly 4% over the last 2 years. But I will tell you that we are experiencing a moderate slowdown. We, meaning Russia, is experiencing a moderate slowdown. The Ministry of Economic Development just announced they're forecasting 2.6% growth in this year, although on the slide you'll see that's the current IMF forecast of 3.7%. So we are seeing a little bit of a slowdown. You can see that because the price of oil has been decreasing, and the economy is very much tied to the price of oil. However, unemployment rates are relatively low compared to other countries. And one item I always like to point out is the GDP per capita is currently $17,700. This far outpaces fellow BRIC countries, Brazil, China, and India. Overall, there are many positive trends for Russia and its economy. Per capita income is growing and will reach $23,200 by 2016, according to Business Monitor International. There is an affluent urban population which serves as a strong base for consumer goods. Personal income in Moscow is more than twice as high as the income in the rest of Russia. So Moscow averages around $1,400, almost $1,500 per month, versus $700 outside of Moscow. And this is for a time period of October 2011 to September 2012. So you can see that the wealth is concentrated in the Moscow-St. Petersburg area, as well as the largest population. Government debt and foreign exchange reserves are also very low and very positive figures there. Another major positive development in Russia is the accession to the World Trade Organization last year. The application of the WTO agreement between the United States and Russia will benefit U.S. businesses and workers by improving market access for U.S. exports of goods and services and bringing Russia into a system of established, enforceable, multilateral trade rules. Some of the benefits include lower tariffs. On average, the final legally binding tariff ceiling for the Russian Federation will be 7.8% after the full implementation of WTO commitments, compared to 2011 average of 10%. So that's a good reduction there. The ceiling average for manufactured goods will be 7.3% versus today's average of 9.5%. And that will include some important sectors for U.S. exporters, such as chemicals, civil aircraft, agricultural equipment, construction equipment, medical equipment. So to find out the implications on your particular products using your HS number for your products, go to the website on the screen, and you'll get this PowerPoint after the presentation. Also, improved market access. As part of the accession, Russia concluded 30 bilateral agreements on market access for services and 57 on market access for goods. Specifically on services, the Russian Federation has made specific commitments on 11 service sectors in 116 subsectors. Some affected sectors include telecommunications, insurance, banking, transport, and distribution services, and that's important to bring some competition into logistics to make the logistics costs go down and make them more efficient. Government procurement, of course, the government plays a large role in the Russian economy. The Russian Federation intends to join the WTO Government Procurement Agreement and would notify this intention to the WTO Government Procurement Committee at the time of accession. Russia would become an observer to the Government Purchase Agreement and would initiate negotiations for membership within 4 years after its accession. So the Russian government agencies would, upon accession, award contracts in a more transparent manner. So we're hoping that Russia will sign this government procurement agreement as part of the WTO, but as of yet they have not. And customs fees. Russia will cut its maximum customs fees by about 2/3 and establish lower fixed fees for the customs clearance of goods. And although not related to WTO, I also want to point out that Russia has also become more integrated with some of its neighbors. A customs union has been established between Russia, Kazakhstan, and Belarus. This facilitates free trade between these two countries with no internal customs control and the free flow of goods, which means that once you get your product into Russia or Kazakhstan or Belarus, you can then sell to those other two countries in a border-free environment or customs-free environment. Now, Russia does present, I talked about some of the opportunities and some of the excitement in Russia, but it does present a long list of concerns. Bureaucracy and corruption make it difficult to operate a business in Russia. It's also considered one of the most corrupt countries in the world. So let's take a look at the Transparency International's 2012 Corruptions Percentage Index. And here you'll see Russia listed on the on this ranking table. This ranks them in order. You'll see that Russia's not on this page. So we'll look on this page. And I don't see Russia here. And up, yep, there it is. So you can see that Russia ranks pretty low on the ratings listings. They rank 133rd out of 174 countries. So that, of course, is an issue. Russia has been perceived as having a very corrupt atmosphere in which to conduct business. And since this is a perceptions index, it's going to take a long time for Russia to improve in these rankings. Even if things on the ground do seem to be improving, which I think they are. With the entrance of more Western companies in the Russian economy, adherence to global anti-bribery rules, such as the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, is gaining more traction in Russia. And as I indicated earlier, Russia does present a long list of concerns. Here you'll see how Russia stacks up against other BRIC countries in the corruption percentages index, so they do have a low ranking even compared to BRIC countries. Customs procedures are considered one of the areas of trouble for importers, as many federal customs regulations are open to interpretation by local authorities. Customs facilitation and document charges are common requests from customs officials to ensure the release of your goods. It's essential to work with an experienced freight forwarder in Russia. It's also essential to take control of your intellectual property. Be sure to register all patents and trademarks through the proper authorities as soon as you consider, and I want to underscore that, consider entering the Russian market, including registering .ru domain names instead of the .com. There's .ru in Russia, if necessary. Russia has an IPR attaché, an intellectual property rights attaché, in our office in Moscow, and his office can assist you with any IPR questions. Many businesses have found it hard to find qualified business partners or conduct due diligence in Russia, and many potential partners are not willing to share business information. So that's a challenge that you can use one of our international company profile services that your USEAC can describe to you to provide a little bit more due diligence on companies you're looking to work with. There's also a shortage of individuals trained in Western-style management practices. And finally, product registration is very cumbersome and a very lengthy process. Finding a business partner who can assist with product registration is also a very valuable service for you. Now, here's a breakout of the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index. As you can see, Russia ranks in the lower half globally, but performs well against some of its BRIC peers. The presidential administration of Vladimir Putin has made improving their business rankings a priority. However, this ranking represents the current business climate in which you'll be entering. You'll see the two areas that I circled. The bottom one is enforcing contracts. You'll see that they actually perform rather well here. Russia does have a well-developed system of commercial courts known as arbitrage courts. The procedural rules applicable to Russian arbitrage courts are based on general principles of procedural law adopted in continental Europe. So, traditionally, Russian arbitrage courts favor written documentation, documentary evidence, rather than examination of witnesses, hearing experts, or audio-video records. Therefore, it's essential to have a written contract or agreement when entering into your business relationship. You'll also see that they perform poorly in an area that you'll be most interested in, which is trading across borders. So let's look at that in a little bit of detail. You'll note the number of days it takes to import a product. This does not include shipping time. You can see that the time is a full 26 days longer than the OECD average. This time translates into increased costs, $2,920 per container to get customs clearance, compared to the OECD average of $1,080. So I'll leave this on the screen for a moment so you can review some of the figures. So now let's take a look at some of the opportunities in the market in general and discuss some of the specific sectors. Now, I've mentioned some of these items earlier, but here are a few points I'd like to touch upon. We all need to remember that a little over 20 years ago, this country had a completely different economic structure. So they have made significant progress from the upheaval of the breakup of the Soviet Union. The economy has experienced significant economic growth, although it is still too tied to the price of oil, as witnessed during the recent economic crash. Russia is a huge market with significant natural resources. And for better or for worse, the government is heavily involved into the economy of the country. U.S. exports to Russia are growing on a significant rate, although starting at a low base. Russia stands as only the 28th largest export market for the United States. So it's one of the largest economies in the world, but it's only our 28th largest trading partner. The federal government is key, as I mentioned, is a key driver of economic priorities of the country. The government is using oil money to diversify the economy, especially to move toward a knowledge-based economy. And while this is a top-down approach, it does have some weaknesses, but there is significant spending there. Infrastructure in both roads and power distribution are needed. So a lot of infrastructure spending is going on in Russia. The electricity grid is notoriously inefficient. As Russia's internal energy needs increase, it is vital that they use power efficiently so they can continue to export their main export, which is oil and gas. Russia has a large stock of expertise in scientific and mathematical communities as a legacy of the Soviet education system. This is translating to considerable skill in information technologies. The government is trying to spur innovation from this intellectual talent pool and commercialize this talent. There are many investment opportunities and sales opportunities that can tap into this network. For example, Rus Nano Corporation and this is a state-owned Rus Nano Corporation, has heavily invested in developing Russian industry for a variety of high technology fields. Some of these investments have also occurred in the United States. Russia and Russian companies are very interested in any joint venture products that involve an element of technology or intellectual property transfer into Russia. And as I mentioned, there are major infrastructure needs in Russia. This is due to both years of underinvestment in the areas and to attract major global events that are occurring in Russia. The Sochi Olympics is less than a year away, so many of the contracts for these projects have already been awarded or have been completed. However, in December 2010, FIFA announced that Russia was chosen to host the 2018 World Cup. This past September, Russia's sports minister, Vitaly Mutko, said construction of sports facilities and infrastructure for the 2018 Football World Cup would cost $19.2 billion, nearly double the initial forecast. All 12 stadiums required for the tournament are in need of construction or refurbishment. However, the majority of the budget will go to updating transport and the hospitality sector infrastructure in the host cities, the 11 cities that are listed below. The cost estimate includes needed improvements to airports and roads, as well as communications and medical facilities in and around the World Cup cities. Mutko said that financing would be split between 50-50 between public and private sector. As with any municipal project, the awarding of major construction and other contracts is often non-transparent in Russia. It's best to work with a Russian-based partner to provide equipment and services on a subcontracted basis. Our commercial officer in St. Petersburg, Ken Duckworth, can provide additional information on opportunities related to the World Cup. And you can email him directly or email me. I'll have my contact information later and get you information about that. So you can see the infrastructure needs with these projects are similar to the needs for the country as a whole that we mentioned earlier. Excuse me. And so in the next few minutes, I'm going to focus on the following four sectors. These key sectors listed on the screen are those found in our country commercial guide. The sectors that are highlighted have been identified in the Illinois and Missouri State Export Opportunity Reports, which are found on the link below on this page. There are also a number of opportunities for food exports to Russia. Details on those markets can be found at the Foreign Agricultural Service. You'll find a link to the Agricultural Service at the end of this presentation. And I understand that you also have a very strong agricultural department here in Missouri that can provide some additional information on that. And your local USEAC, St. Louis USEAC contacts, export assistant contacts can get you contacts to the state. So the State Agricultural Service. So now let's talk about aerospace. Demand for business and leisure travel has increased at the same rapid rate as the Russian economy in general. The major Russian airlines are purchasers of Boeing and Airbus jets and other manufacturers. An aging fleet of Russian aircraft from domestic and international manufacturers requires high demand for new aircraft, parts, avionics, and ground services. Russian manufacturers are not globally competitive, but the Russian government is very interested in supporting local manufacturers. Joint ventures, as I mentioned before, or opportunities to increase Russian content in your products will be viewed very favorably in sales transactions. Russia is also a major market for private jets. A new market research report in the aviation market will be available soon, so if you'd like to be notified when it's available, please send me an email, and I'll make sure I get it over to you. Oops, I think I went too far. No, I didn't. Oh, you know what? I skipped a slide, which is the agricultural equipment sector. As I mentioned earlier, Russia has huge opportunities in the agricultural sector due to the sheer amount of arable land and their historic agrarian tradition. And due to a lack of investment in key agricultural inputs, Russian farmers are much less productive than their Western analogs. Russia does maintain a position as a major world exporter of grains, but Russia is also a huge importer of virtually all food products. There are currently major efforts to become self-sufficient in food production, which requires the importation of machinery, irrigation equipment, animal genetics, and live animals. Russian agricultural machinery firms continue to produce low-quality equipment. However, protectionist measures by the Russian government are being used to support the industry, and this includes higher tariffs for Western equipment and subsidies for Russian-made equipment. There are a number of Russian agricultural trade shows in Moscow and the regions that are attractive places to introduce your products. The neighboring Ukraine and Kazakhstan are also major markets with similar characteristics as Russia, so you may want to consider entering all of the above when you're considering the Russian market. We also have U.S. commercial service offices in Kazakhstan and Ukraine. So we already covered the aerospace sector. So let's talk about construction. And with all the talk we had of infrastructure improvements, it's clear to see why construction equipment is a priority sector. Although we anticipate double-digit growth for the foreseeable future, you will face formidable competition. There are many global equipment firms who have a foothold here, including joint venture relationships, dealer networks, and manufacturing facilities. However, with an established sales and distribution system to tap into, there are many opportunities for new and used equipment and parts for distributors or OEMs, as well as building material. Finally, let's look at the medical device market. With a large population and increasing wealth, there's a strong demand for medical devices and pharmaceuticals. Medical care, devices, and pharmaceuticals is another sector, a priority sector for the Russian government. Significant investments are planned to increase medical know-how in the country as well. So all medical equipment and devices coming into Russia must be registered. It's one of the biggest challenges in the medical sector. The registration process is dynamic, complex, expensive, and sometimes time-consuming. However, the time and effort required for this is often offset by the high profits that are made in the sector due to the large opportunities here. In fact, one of these opportunities is a trade mission that is occurring in October of this year. The mission will be led by a senior Department of Commerce official and will include a visit to Moscow and St. Petersburg. So let me know if you're interested in receiving more information. I'll be sure to get it to you. You can also click on the website below, and that will get you right to the Trade Mission website, which will contain a lot more details. So finally, in this last section, I'll discuss some suggestions for selling into the Russian market. The methods of entering and selling into the Russian market are similar to those you'll find in other markets. First, let's look at agents. It's not a common practice in Russia for foreign companies to rely solely on the services of an agent. Distributors and representative offices, however, often employ agents in the Russian regions in order to promote products. The most common market entry strategy is to select a good distributor or several distributors, depending on the product. U.S. companies can consider a variety of national, regional, and local distribution alternatives. In some product categories, for example, apparel, cosmetics, packaged foods, consumer electronics, foreign suppliers can choose from a growing number of established distributors. A good distributor will typically sell and deliver foreign suppliers' products to the end users and or the retail market and provide a wide range of logistical support, like customs clearance, warehousing, inventory management, etc. However, handling promotion and advertising campaigns exclusively through an independent distributor can often produce disappointing results. Russian distributors normally handle products from multiple suppliers and are not typically dedicated to promoting a specific company's product, unless the supplier provides substantial support for promotion and advertising. Some foreign manufacturers, in addition to using distributors, have established their own representative offices. The major advantages of opening a representative office is that foreign companies have more direct contact with their end users and control over the promotion and distribution of their products. However, under Russian civil code, such offices cannot be directly involved in commercial activity. Instead, they typically oversee the network of distributors and agents that perform commercial functions. This approach affords greater control by the foreign supplier over the distribution process and helps reduce some risk for you. As we noted, Russia is a challenging market, but it's got huge opportunities. When looking for a distributor, try to understand their territorial coverage. Due to Russia's size, multiple distributors in different geographic areas might be appropriate. Customs is also a challenge in Russia, as we mentioned. You will want to pass off as much responsibility for the customs clearance process as possible. Russia treats their customs authority as a revenue-generating venture, so they closely monitor the valuation of products entering the country. Valuation disputes are a major reason for products being held in customs. Although you can encounter problems, the customs process has improved and there are clear processes for resolving disputes. It is important to ensure that all of your paperwork is in order before shipment. If you can find a distributor and freight forwarder with experience in the customs process, that would be very valuable and worth the extra cost or reduction in your profit margin. Russia is currently underserved in banking. Many companies have a difficult time getting adequate credit, and it is expensive. Working out financing with your partner, and be sure to explore all the possible options with U.S. government financing institutions, such as the Export-Import Bank. Your Export Assistance Center is a great source for this, to help you get the right contacts. You should also take an active role in protecting your intellectual property. Be sure to register your own trade names and marks yourself, and do not leave this up to your Russian business partner. So being successful in Russia takes a long-term commitment. Due to the challenges of this market, mistakes will be made in the beginning, and it may take some time before generating profits. We encourage you to conduct proper due diligence on your company's partners, and be sure to follow all Russian and U.S. laws from the start. Although we've said a lot about corruption, there are many successful American companies in Russia. They say that you need to hold your ground and be firm about illegal payments or bribes from the very beginning. You will be protecting yourself from U.S. and Russian legal ramifications, and you will be sending a message that this and future payment requests will not be tolerated. Selling into Russia can be a great opportunity for your business. You can establish yourself in the largest and fastest growing market in Europe and profit from it for years to come. You'll be joining hundreds of other U.S. and European companies that are successfully selling into Russia. Entering into Russia can also be your starting point for sales into Kazakhstan and Belarus, who have joined Russia to form a customs union, as we mentioned before. I also want to point out that the Commercial Service is currently developing a system of regional management to our international office structure. Currently, the Commercial Service Moscow office has responsibility for Kazakhstan and Ukraine offices as well. This will provide seamless services across this region of the world. And finally, this slide compiles a number of important links to documents and websites that can be good additional sources of information for you. Here's my contact information. Feel free to email me at any time or call me. It's a 9-hour time difference right now between St. Louis and Moscow. And you can also find additional information on the commercial service offices in Russia, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine on export.gov at these links. So thank you for your time, and Les, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Ken. And now for the question and answer portion of the program, we refer to Margaret Gottlieb. Margaret?
While we're waiting for people to queue up in the live question line, I do have some from the question and answer box. One of them is, are there any particular issues unusual or unique with language barriers?
Yes. English is still not widely spoken in Russia. You will find, many companies that are working with U.S. companies, of course, will have an English speaker. However, when you're conducting business over here, you're going to need a translator. I mean, that's pretty much, you're definitely going to need one. If you're exhibiting at a trade show, you're going to need to hire a translator with you, unless, of course, you have Russian language skills. Documents should be translated into Russian sales materials. In part of our services that we offer at the commercial service, we do offer some translations where we have some good negotiated rates with some outside firms who can translate from English to Russian. But definitely you're not going to be able to conduct your business in English.
Is there anything in particular, Ken, that you can think of that would be too difficult to compete with in the Russian market? Any particular product that comes to mind?
Russia does have a large border with China, so I mean, the similar issues that you'll face here in the United States. There are a lot of Chinese imports that are coming in. Russia does have a very good trade relationship with China, so that the flow of goods does flow pretty freely there. So on your low market goods, it's going to be difficult. There are still some opportunities there, but you're going to be challenged. The higher end, the more quality the product, I mean, this is probably the same with everywhere in the world. The sales opportunities are very good. Russians are very brand conscious. So if you are affiliated with a name brand in consumer goods, that's certainly very advantageous to you, and you should utilize that to your fullest extent, and just to make sure that you have your intellectual property all wrapped up before you even start entering into the market, or else you might get into some trouble. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, are there any particular standards that products must comply with? For example, like in the European Union, we have the CE standards. Are there certain products that must comply with a particular standard?
Yeah, pretty much everything, and that's not an exaggeration. When you export something or import something into Russia, you'll need to get either a certification of conformity, or you'll have to meet certain specific standards on a variety of regulatory bodies. Just 2 weeks ago, or last week, we had a standards forum where we had some individuals from the Department of Commerce come out to discuss harmonization of standards between the United States and Russia, because European has their standards, the United States has their standards, and Russia really has their own completely different set of standards. So it's something that you're going to have to address, and that's why we suggest, we do have some standards, conformity assessment bodies that we not suggest you use, but we know other companies have used before, so we can certainly provide those to you. They're in our country commercial guide, and there's a whole section on standards and conformity assessment in our country commercial guide. So I suggest you take a look at that and read up on that section for more specific details.
And that country commercial guide can be found on export.gov.
Yep, export.gov, and I just clicked back to that resources document, and it's on. There's a link on that page.
Can you name some of the types of products that you know of that have been a successful export in Russia, that have been perhaps surprisingly that somebody has exported to Russia or just been very successful in Russia?
There are a lot of examples of successful companies in Russia. So everything from the largest multinational companies. So all the U.S. multinationals are there. So 3M is there. John Deere has its own assembly facility in Moscow and in Orenburg in Russia. All the consumer goods products are there in Russia. We've had some success with some apparel manufacturers. I cover the apparel sector, so we have had some success in those sectors. I don't know anything particularly surprising. I don't know if I can note that. Well, but I guess what I could say is that if you have worked with your Export Assistance Center and you've done some research that there is a market for your product in this particular country. I mean, it's not just a large country and you think that we should just go into Russia. But if you have some real maybe data behind it or some thoughts behind it and you have a commitment to entering this market, then you have a pretty good chance of being successful, just because it's such a large market and there's so many opportunities here, especially in some of those or many of those key sectors that I mentioned earlier.
How important is it to have product literature translated into Russian?
I'd say it's very important. You might be interfacing with someone who speaks English, but the decision maker at the company most likely is not going to speak English. And if you do, if you're in it for a long-term commitment, which you need to be if you want to enter Russia, you're going to need to get this stuff translated anyway. So it's best to get some good sales materials that are translated. Then you can share those with your distributor, and then as you develop your relationship with your distributor, then you can discuss how you're going to share costs in terms of printing, translation, etc. But you really should have your basic product line catalog translated into Russian.
Given that Russia is a very large country and logistics can be possibly problematic, is there a port of entry that you recommend, Ken, that is better than others?
Yeah, the main one is Moscow, which is air. There's three airports in Moscow, and they all have commercial cargo shipping, and that seems to work well. Not every product is going to come in air, but the customs authorities seem to be managing things relatively well. St. Petersburg is the big shipping port. It does freeze over in the winter. Some people ship their items into Finland just because the loading, unloading, etc. is more efficient there, and then train it into Russia. So that's a possibility. Kaliningrad is on the Baltic Sea as well. That is a free trade zone in Russia. So you can ship into there, warehouse it there with customs free until, of course, you ship it out. And then you can ship it into Russia. And then some other companies, from what we understand, are shipping through, I believe it's Gdansk in Poland, I believe, and then through Belarus, because some have mentioned that the Belarusian customs is a little bit easier than the Russian customs, and that goes either truck or train. And then in the south, Novorossiysk is the big southern port. There's only so many ports of entry, so you're kind of locked into a monopoly down there in terms of the customs and the shipping. So if you have stuff going to the south, that's usually where it enters. And then in the west, in the east, Vladivostok is the other location. There's not, the infrastructure is not particularly good in Russia, so there's only a limited number of ports of entry. So that's the problem in terms of, that's why some of the costs are so high.
And having said that, Ken, what about, so they get into one of these seaports or airports. Years past, we've heard stories, about pills. Is it gotten better now? Are trucks, can items be trucked from the port inland or the train, and is it safe to do so?
That's a tough question. I think, I know that I've talked to some freight forwarders. Insurance rates are pretty high here, and if insurance rates are high, then that would lead you to believe that there's a lot of loss. So I can't comment too much on how things have changed. Things are gradually improving, but it's not as if they're to Western standards or European standards yet. So there are some issues, and that's why, I mean, we try to get people to, or encourage exporters to, work on their Incoterms as closely as possible to shift as much of the burden on customs clearance and transportation, et cetera, in the country to your distributor or your buyer as much as possible. There are so many buyers who buy stuff FOB or even ex-works that, the more risk you'll take and the better credit terms you can offer, you're certainly going to get more business. But we encourage you to pass off that risk as much as possible, even if it decreases your profit margin. And rail is really how things get around here.
And in contracts, whether one sells to importer or distributor or to an end user, is it advisable to have a formal contract in place?
Absolutely. There's a number of U.S. law firms. There's a number of U.S. law firms with practices in Russia. There's a lot of law firms active in Russia, and if they don't have, if they're not U.S. based, then they usually have a relationship with a U.S. law firm, so that you're working with someone in the United States. So it's definitely encouraged, and a lot of companies have their court of their court of determination or dispute resolution court. That's not the correct phrase, to be the UK. So that seems to be an accepted practice. A lot of my answers have been negative in the last 5 minutes, but I do want to reiterate that Russia is a growing economy. It is the 7th largest economy in the world. Our exports to Russia are not as high as they could be, and so there's a lot of opportunities. If you see these reports, you'll always see that Russia is the #1 market for cars in Europe, the #1 market for handheld devices like smartphones, the #1 market in all these other categories. So, there are certainly challenges, but there are a lot of very successful companies in Russia. And a lot of the companies I talk to, a lot of the multinational companies talk to, say that, their Russian operations fund, their Chinese operations because it's profitable. You can get your money back into the United States. You can get your money out of Russia. So there's certainly some good advantages to doing business in Russia.
I will turn it back to our moderator, Les, to conclude the program.
Thank you, Margaret, Ken, and Corey. This concludes this program with a reminder to watch our other videos in this series, and feel free to contact the U.S. Commercial Service for any further information. Contact information can be found off the main page of export.gov. Near the top of the page is a tab for locations. Select domestic or international to find your local office. Thank you. Thank you.